Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show. But I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of life coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the wait list if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program. Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show. But I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of life coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the wait list if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program. You're listening to the Think Unbroken podcast, and I'm your host, Michael Unbroken. I'm an author, speaker, coach, and advocate for adult survivors of childhood trauma and abuse. In this podcast, you will learn how to transform your trauma into triumph, turn breakdowns into breakthroughs, and go from victim to being the hero of your own story. You can learn more at thinkunbrokenpodcast.com, and of course, check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify at Think Unbroken Podcast. I think the thing to take away from it more is because the vast majority of people have not wrestled, Jake. I think we both know this.
Yeah.
But I do want to say that the thing I want people to hold on to in this is like life, whether or not you like it, is an individual sport. What you do has nothing to do with me. As much as I wish I could blame Jake for how bad my life sucks, how much I can't get the thing I want, no matter what, it's like go and take inventory of your calendar. Go look at the way you spend your time, your money, your effort, your energy, right? And look at the way that you present yourself into the world as the person that you are, and have a willingness to look in that mirror, man, because that was the pivotal changing point for me too. And look, I don't want to be preachy because people have heard this before, but it's like, listen to this show, pay attention to people's stories like yours, Jake, because we all have something in common. We all had to get the out of our own way.
100%, dude. But so here's the other angle to that though, right? The thing that took me a while to learn as well. So I do think wrestling is probably, for me, and grappling and martial arts, the greatest personal development tool that I ever really got involved with in the first place, right? So it's that, this is what I call the 5 pillars of greatness. I don't know. I'm listening to too much to this personal development, so I'm coming up with my own.
I'm obsessed with it. So
okay,
please, tell me the 5 pillars.
So you're speaking my language. So the first is like that get real, right? That rock bottom, that man in the mirror moment. The second is getting obsessed. The third is taking calculated risks, right? Which I think hopefully we talked about all of these. The next one is that massive action. And the thing that I was missing out the most that I've recently come to, and maybe it's as I approach 50 and my testosterone decreases, or I don't know what the hell, or because I got so many injuries, I can't really do what I used to do. But people is the 5th pillar, and I had ignored it for a long time. because I wanted to do everything myself. Because of exactly what you said. People let me down all the time. Nobody worked as hard as me. Didn't do it the way I did it to my standards. And I did a lot of great stuff with those first 4 pillars. I did a lot of cool stuff. Like I said, I started the whole fitness mace movement, which still blows my mind to this day. I'm like, I still have to be like, oh, that was me.
I saw some video on YouTube, or it might have been TikTok, a reel, whatever these things are, the other day. And I meant to send it to you. And I was like, in passing, and it had like 500,000 views. And it was, or maybe you posted it. It was a girl with a mace, just like doing this mace work. I was like, I know the guy who made that.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Like, I still am like, wow. So I was having massive impact, but I mean, I want like really massive. I want legacy, dude. I want to die and have my like immortality. I don't want physical immortality. I want my to live on for like generations, right? Like that's what I want. That's crazy.
Yeah, but your is impact.
Yeah. So, but that's going to take people. And that is that 5th pillar, is you have to really learn to be a leader. And here's the irony. So going back on my story to when I was in college, and I ended up going to college. So when I got sick, I think I was a sophomore. It was between sophomore and junior year. I got sick and I just was like, I can't be physical right now. So I doubled down on academics and I did great. Okay. Because I didn't have anything else to do. Right. I ended up going to the University of Colorado on a scholarship. First person in my family to go to college, first person to get a scholarship, like awesome. Okay. I go on a leadership call. It's a super prestigious leadership scholarship, right? Only like, I think it's like 50 out of the 10,000 incoming freshmen get chosen to be in this program. And I'm in this leadership program and I'm a loser, dude. I'm like doing drugs. I'm like picking the easy way out. And I get in this leadership, and here my buddy, who's just this scrappy little skateboarding kid, is mobilizing all these people to build skate parks and do all this stuff, right? And that was the real lesson for me, is if I want to have big impact, like Thrasher level impact, right? Jake Phelps, the guy who ran it, who my friend took over from, like that guy blew that up. It's lived past his life, right? Like that's where I'm wanting to go with scientific wrestling and all this crazy that I do. So I think I might have done that with the mace, but the mace was just kind of a side project. That was like luck in a way. I mean, I did it and it was designed, but also it wasn't my intention. I was aiming over here and I hit over here, right? Like, so I'm like, okay, I need to do this with the wrestling thing. And that's going to take people. So that is where the leadership component comes in. And that's not something, I do think that I've started now in the last probably 5 or 6 years, really taking that serious. Like, how do I get people to actually get into what I'm doing? And how do I create a positive sum game, what Grant Cardone calls the winner's exchange? Okay, that's awesome, but it's just a simple idea of win-win. Mm-hmm. How do I align people's interests with my interest, like with what I want to do? So that's really where I've gone in the business of this. To me, business is an ethical system. It's a moral system, right? Because I look at like human interaction. I like your Unbroken shirt, and I can either trick you and steal it from you somehow, or coconut you on the head and take it, or I can give you $20, and if the shirt is worth less than the $20 I have, you give it to me. Your shirt's worth more than the $20 and we're both a win-win. We're both happy for the exchange. That is where I've been spending the last 5 or 6 years, almost entirely in business. So outside of the wrestling is like my obsession. The wrestling is what has educated me, what has fulfilled me, and is my life purpose. But just like I said, I'm aiming for that and I hit elsewhere. Like I've started all these other companies and like I started the first reverse mortgage consultancy.
When you think about this journey for yourself and the path that it's now laid in front of you, how can people who have these massively abusive experiences in life and they haven't yet stepped into their power, they haven't yet stepped into the ability to be that person they know they're capable of being, like what does it really take? Because people are always like, it's motivation and it's action. I'm like, no, there's something else there. And I'm wondering if there's something else there for you as well.
So here's the deal. I made the realization that my trauma doesn't define who I am, right? And if I play into that, I'm just a broke kid, and I, got beat up. Every fight I got in, I lost. I'm not like you, not 6'4". I was like 85 pounds, right? At the time. The low man on the totem pole, felt like, my parents, I know they love me, but they didn't really show it that much, at the time. And they were stressed out. And I think the truth is, I realized that if I said yes to all that trauma, then I'm saying no to the rest of my life.
Mm.
And the truth is, I am not going to let that happen. Right. So I tie things to everything. Right. I wanted to go and win and apply myself because I wanted a way out of the life that I was living. Right. And every day I heard, you're dumb as a box of rocks. You're dumb, and those, and not just, that wasn't just my father. That was just like how everybody talked to people.
Everybody.
And like, yeah. And I'm like, they would say that. And I noticed myself starting to accept it just a little bit, kind of sulking back. And when I was 13, I went into my dad's room. I grabbed his 30-30 lever action rifle. And I put it in my mouth, and I went to pull the trigger. And, I just remember being like, so like alone, excuse me, in that moment. And I think it's the grace of God, even though I didn't believe in God at that point, that pulled that gun out of my mouth and realized to say, no more am I going to let these labels affect the rest of my life. Because if I say yes to this decision, literally with the gun in my mouth, I say no to the rest of my life. But it's the same thing holding on to regret. It's the same thing holding on to past failures. It's the same thing holding on to somebody who cast a label on you and you accepted it. It's the exact same. So realize that you must say no to that so that you can say yes to the rest of your life. You cannot let it define you.
Yeah, I would have the goosebumps sitting here hearing that, because I resonate with that in such a deep way, looking at 26 years old, hitting this massive rock bottom, dude, just as low as I could possibly ever be. And realizing it was a truth that I had to accept, that I was being exactly what everyone ever said I would be.
Yeah.
It's what you just said, man. I was like, dude, I am literally such a loser. I'm such a loser. And look, that's a hard moment to have with yourself. And it's not about, for me in that moment, it wasn't even like I'm beating myself up about it. It's like, dude, you're a loser because look at your decisions. Look at your actions. Look at your friends, dude. Look at the people you're spending your time with. Yeah, do you think that these people are ever going to grow into what they have the potential to be? Because all they're doing is getting high, snorting coke, getting drunk. And I'm like, what are you doing? And that identity shift is everything.
Yeah, man, you're hitting the nail right on the head. And it takes a person with a little amount of pride or so much pain that allows it to squash the pride to say, hey, you know what? I'm not doing this right. I'm not doing this right at all. You know what? It's my fault. It's not their fault. It's like whenever I was growing up and I was in every learning disability class, for a while, I believed they said, you're dumb, you're no good, you're a box of rock. Well, no wonder I was in every learning disability class, because I was a little kid and that's what I heard. And I came from a broken home. So I'm like, I don't care to read. I don't care to apply myself in school. But when I quit listening to that, I said, no more. I dropped my pride. I dropped the labels and said, hey, let's go. Let's go. And it's like most people think this turnaround is like 3 years, 5 years. Once you get the accolade, like I'm a world champion. And I'll be honest with you, it doesn't matter. That does not matter, because I will not allow a label to define the rest of my life, whether it's world champion or dumbass. I put one foot in front of the other and realize that change happened the moment you decide. The change in your life happens the moment you decide, not 3 years later. And when you have that in your brain, it's like, I'm winning right now just by taking this step in the right direction.
Yeah. I want to go into that because I think this is really important, because there are people, I promise you, dude, I've been doing this long enough that I know there are people listening right now who are like, these two are victim shaming. And I'm like, no, we're not. What we're doing is simply telling you the truth. And that's what people are so terrified of. There is something innately within us that wants to hide and avoid reality so that we feel safe. people ask me all the time, they're like, what does it mean to actually heal trauma? And Tyson, my answer is always this: it's to stand in your truth without apologizing for it.
Yeah.
And what I'm wondering is, people have this notion. They're like, man, I know I can change. I believe it in me. I listen to Michael and Tyson all the time. I read the books. I'm in the courses. I'm doing all the things, but my life isn't different.
Yeah.
Why isn't their life different?
Check your surroundings and who you're around. You see, when I left the Midwest, again, my dad and I had a knockdown drag out. I had enough at that point, and I grabbed him by the throat and I was choking him to death. He wouldn't even remember this because he was so out of it, right? Thank God somebody pulled us apart, or else I could very well be never doing this. I could never have the family I have. I could never have anything, right? I moved almost 1,800 miles away to Washington State, as far as I could get away, for a new surroundings. I had nothing. I had very little money, enough to put gas in the tank. I had a few things I had put in the back of my pickup. I had nothing, but I had nothing, but I was willing to do everything to get a new surroundings. Guys, if you're struggling, if this is you right now, if you're like, man, my relationships are bad, I'm around a bad group of people, get out. Get out. I say it to people all the time. See, I had the ability to live that urban lifestyle and the country boy lifestyle, right? If you're in an area where there's high crime and your kids aren't having a chance, and you say, well, I fit in here, I wouldn't fit in a rural community. Bull crap. Get somewhere where you can change, where you can shift, where your family can be safe, where you can grow. Get around people that take you to the next level. Because here's the deal. If you don't get around those people, you're better off to be alone. And that was my journey for a long time, was alone. Because I liked listening to Tony Robbins. I liked listening to Les Brown. I loved Scott Thomas. Like, I loved these. So I'm like, none of my friends like this stuff.
Have you experienced anything like that in your journey of, and not even necessarily as whether it be a person of color, whether it be as a man, as an athlete, as a poet, but as you discover who you are, what power has writing given you?
You know, the older I get, I think the more, I mean, there's all kinds of ways that, you know, like sort of carrying on some of the previous ways that I was sort of answering. You know, there's ways that, you know, when I'm writing something, I'm writing with a question. I'm writing, and, you know, I write about things that I do not know or do not understand. And the writing is a kind of way to engage in some way with what I do not understand. So there's a way that my writing life, my engagement with writing, is a way of sort of coming to understand myself and other things more deeply. But there's this other thing, I think, and that catalog of Unabashed Gratitude book, I feel like is beginning to sort of get.
We'll be right back to the show. But before we do, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, FactorMills.com, where if you go to factormills.com/unbroken50 and use the code unbroken50, you can get 50% off your first order. That's factormills.com/unbroken50. If you're like me and you are a person who is busy trying to create a life, heal, work on their health, wealth, and relationships, and not to mention deal with the day-to-days of normal life, you do not have time to be going to the grocery store and trying to figure out what you're going to cook every single day of the week. In fact, one time I did the math and I realized I was spending over 15 hours a week at the grocery store and cooking. When I added Factor, I got to use that time for myself, for my family, for my friends, for my community, and for my business. And so if you're in the place where you need some more support in the kitchen, head to factormills.com/unbroken50 and use the code unbroken50 to get 50% off.
To that, and I have this book called The Book of Delights, where every day for a year, more or less, I wrote a short essay about something that delighted me. And, you know, it's a full book, not just delightful because it's written by a person. And one of the things that I sort of am finding more and more is that, a couple things. The first thing is that, like, in writing this book of delight, I'm writing, every single day, almost. I don't do everything every single day, like a job. But one of the things that I find is, I eventually found out that, my question is joy. Joy is my real fundamental question, like delight is interesting and it's kind of like a segment or some kind of participant in joy, but joy is my real question. And joy to me is like this profound and like sort of grave emotion, actually. And partly it's grave because joy to me is like, it kind of, something registers as joy, or you enter into joy when you're also deeply aware of the fact that we're going to die, that we're in the process of dying. And there's some kind of like holding of that understanding with each other. It requires witness, profound witness that, and I'm saying the word with, like with, W-I-T-H, but I hear it sounds a little bit like witness, which is interesting to me at this moment. But there's a kind of holding each other's, whatever you call that, fleetingness, passingness, tenderness, which is soft, and it is vulnerable, and it's also, to me, it's a kind, it's this kind of reaching. It's a kind of reaching that to me constitutes the reason to be alive. You know what I mean? And so, and this is stuff that I'm sort of thinking, I'm learning this in therapy and I'm learning this in conversation, but I'm also learning it and studying it in my writing. So that in a way, if I were to talk about a kind of power that I'm sort of learning about in my writing, it's in a way, it's the power, and power is a word that, I would never say it, but it's an interesting word. What I feel like I'm learning is how fundamentally entangled I am with you, with everything, how fundamentally entangled we are, how we are not without each other, and that to me is a kind of, there's all these words for it. One of the words is gratitude. To know that we do not exist without the tree out this window. Like, without, without the biome, without what we do not even recognize as there, we do not exist. And to sort of like inhabit this sense of sort of perpetual, I'm in a kind of beautiful debt constantly, or I am beholden constantly. I am not without all of this, which is to say, and that the word for that, one of the words for that is gratitude. One of the words for that is, to me, joy.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I'm actually enamored by you saying that, because I resonate in such a deep way, because I look at the world as interconnected, and the fact that it is so much a part of our community through human connection that brings us together. And my experience is being this kid who was very much lost, right? Very much on the wrong side of the track, just seeking something, would find myself completely displaced by writing and deep within books. And I would be the kid who would elect to take the library class in high school so that in the library, I didn't have to exist within the frames of the scope of humanity. But the irony in that is finding the joy in book reading being my connection to humans, right? And thinking about this thing as, wow, okay, these words resonate, because as writers, and now as a writer, and looking at this and thinking about, one, the power of a challenge, the fact that you wrote every day, or almost seemingly every day, to create something for no other reason than the fact that to create it brought you something that felt good or powerful, or whatever that word might be that you would use. It's enthralling to me. What I'm curious about, and if you don't mind, if I can push you a little bit, because I think that people would appreciate it, is how do you even step into that level of vulnerability with yourself to sit down and take the things that are on your mind and put them into a place where they exist? Not necessarily forever, i.e. on the internet, but just out of you and onto the world.
I mean, in one way, it's like, there are things probably that I don't, that I keep private, of course. In another way, it's like, I guess as a writer, part of my part of my sort of, one of the ways that I sort of exist in the world is to be like, I'm going to share my questions. I'm going to share my questions. Your question is like, how do you I think your question is like, how do you get to that point of that vulnerability? If I hear you right,
within yourself.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm inclined to be like in community. I have people who I love who hold my work and whose work I hold. And so people who can kind of like see what I'm trying to do and be like, this is worthwhile, these questions, this action or whatever, this thing is good, because I actually, that matters to me, people I love and trust being like, yeah, that's,
I get that.
That's good.
And so how, like, what I'm thinking in real time, it's like, how do you even combat that? It's like the same conversation around sex. Like, it's everywhere, but people don't talk about it. So how do you navigate when you're like, man, I'm always feeling triggered. I'm always feeling hypervigilant. I always feel outside of my body, but it's everywhere. Like Brad, what do you do, man?
Well, on a societal level, I think it's really difficult to combat directly, even that word I use, combat it or fighting it. I think that the deepest solution, the really the only long-lasting solution that's going to have a major impact is for individual men to go on their healing journeys, to do their healing work, and for enough men to do that work to really shift the way things are, the perspectives. And, I think things have gotten better, let's say in my lifetime, and they have a long ways to go. That's not to say we're almost there, not by any stretch of the imagination. It's like we're a little bit further along, but there's a lot further to go. And I see that just individual men doing their deep healing work and really, in a sense, overcoming their individual trauma so that they don't spread it. You mentioned this, the patterns, the cycles of violence. I think the violence that we see, in some sense, it's all cycles that probably goes back centuries to the Middle Ages, when things were, ridiculously more violent than they are now, maybe even goes back further than that. And the way I see it, when a man experiences, let's say when a boy experiences his body being disrespected, his boundaries being violated, that boy learns that bodies and boundaries are not something that need to be respected. He actually learns to do that to others. And this is not to say that all boys, all men who are victims of violence will go on to commit violence. And yet I'm willing to bet that there are not very men who act violently who haven't been victims of violence themselves. In fact, I would be willing to bet that it's extraordinarily rare for someone to commit violence who hasn't already been a victim of it. So this is where the importance, I think, of doing the healing work is. Men, and I'm focusing on men because that's men doing their healing work, because that's who commits the most violence and who, it seems to me, it's, boys will be boys. The violence against boys and men is often kind of discounted or accepted. And so there's so much violence committed against men by other men, boys and men. And I think individual men doing their healing work is the way of breaking these cycles, such that on both small and large scales, this violence doesn't get committed against others, and we break these cycles.
Yeah. And, I'd be hard pressed not to say that part of me knows that as humans, we are prone to violence. It's our nature. Go look at, we live in the safest time ever. This is what people don't understand. We live in the safest time ever in history. Humans have been so terrible to each, like, dude, it's crazy what we've done to each other over the time that we've been here. And yet we live in the safest time of all time. And I think that there has to be a healthy expression of violence, because boys will be boys. Like, I do think that, but there has to be this healthy expression of, that's why I love sports. I love martial arts. I love the discipline involved in it. And that's how I fell into it, right? Without sports, without martial arts, God knows what the kind of shit I would have really started to do. Not that I didn't do some really stuff. And I think about that today, how it served me. Martial arts has given me discipline. It's given me the ability to handle really difficult moments of my life. Right. And also, here's what's really interesting. And I don't know if, I'm curious if your military training has given you this, because when I learned to defend myself, I realized I never have to use it. And that's been this really beautiful journey for me. And getting into healing, and I want to go into your story a little bit more in depth here. I realized I was never violent physically in relationships, like intimate relationships with women. I was never violent because I saw my stepdad beat up my mom, and I was like, I don't want to do that. My God, man, the verbal violence was unbelievable. Not only what I would say to myself, but what I would say to my partners, to my brothers, to even my friends. And it was like, I hit this rock bottom moment, and I was like, you got to change everything, dude. You're destroying everything in your path. And I don't think most, and I'm going to speak as a man because I am a man. I don't think most men realize it, because we grow up believing that it's okay to be this way. And then it's reinforced through society, like we're talking, and then in your home, or bullying, and things of that nature. And so I'm wondering, it took my life becoming a complete disaster for me to address this thing that was destroying me. And I'm wondering what happened for you. Like, what was your journey into healing? Like, where did that begin?
Well, it really started in my first marriage. It was not going well. And I was really, specifically looking to, you know what? I take that back. That was actually kind of what came secondarily. I was having health issues and was getting nowhere, dealing with them on in kind of a medical, physical type of way. It was like, there's nothing there. And it was actually a hypnotherapist who I first worked with. And it was kind of like, as soon as I just started pulling back the cover on all of what I was feeling, all of the trauma that I just kind of put in a box and moved beyond. In some ways, at least on a superficial level, my life looked like it was going pretty well at that point, but I wasn't feeling that. I was struggling, and, I've in a sense always been very good at keeping my life together in terms of, going through school, career, etc. So it looked like things were going well, but they weren't really. Emotionally, I was kind of a mess. And it was just kind of, it was kind of the physical issues I was having that started to pull back the layers. And as soon as it did, it was just kind of like, oh, wow, yeah, there's a lot here that I need to work on. So it wasn't so much of a rock bottom for me as what I had put away, repressed, just finding a way to the surface, not accepting the repression, which I think is the way it always is. repression is rarely going to be long lasting. And in a sense, I'm glad it came out for me in as mild a way as it did when I was relatively young, so that I could be forced to work on it at that point, because it certainly can go a lot longer, a lot deeper.
Thank you so much for listening to Think Unbroken. Please share this episode with someone who could use it and help us move forward in our mission of ending generational trauma in our lifetime. And if you would, please take 5 seconds to pop on iTunes or Spotify, hit that 5-star, leave a review, and you can also reach out to us on social at Michael Unbroken or at Think Unbroken. And of course, you can check out our YouTube channel at Think Unbroken. Thank you for being a part of Unbroken Nation, my friends, and until next time, be unbroken. Hey, my friends, we will be right back to the show, but I have a question for you. Are you struggling with the impact of childhood trauma? Well, know that you're not alone. I'm here to let you know that I'm starting a brand new weekly coaching group that includes a year of live coaching, accountability, support, habit and goal setting, and more. I'm starting a waitlist for the group right now, and I'm only taking a handful of people. And I'll let you know that through this personalized coaching, we'll work together to help you understand how your childhood trauma has shaped your beliefs, behaviors, emotions, and will help you create a roadmap for healing and growth. Right now, you can schedule an absolutely free coaching session with me and get put on the wait list if you go to thinkunbroken.com. My friends, it's your time to turn your trauma into triumph, breakdowns into breakthroughs, and become the hero of your own story. And I'm here to support you in doing that. Just go to thinkunbroken.com to register for a free coaching call with me and to get put on the wait list for the brand new weekly coaching program.